Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the option menu widget in Python Tkinter. You know those drop-down menus you see on websites all the time? Well, today we're going to learn how to build them into our applications.
Yeah, it's a really great way to give your users a straightforward way to make a choice. So instead of having them type something out like a country name, you give them a list and they just have to pick the right one.
That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that use case, but you're right. It's way more user-friendly that way. And we're really excited because we've got some excellent material from plus2net.com to help guide us today. So if you're ready to demystify the option menu, let's jump right in. Maybe a good place to start would be to define what an option menu actually is in Tkinter.
Sure, an option menu, it's essentially just what it sounds like. It's a menu of options.
Okay.
You use it when you need a way for the user to select from a set of options that you've predefined. It's a really common way to design graphical user interfaces.
So it's kind of like presenting a menu to someone instead of making them guess what they can order.
Exactly. So you've got your list of options ready to go, and then the user can just pick from that list without having to type anything in.
Makes sense. So how do we go about actually creating one of these option menus? What are the steps involved?
Well, the first thing you do is you import the Tkinter module, of course.
Right. Of course, just like with any Tinker project.
Exactly. Then you're going to set up your basic window using the TK command.
Okay, so that's like setting up the stage before the actors come on.
Yeah, exactly. You give it a size with the geometry, you can give it a title, and then we need to bring in a special something called a string var.
String var.
Yeah, and this is a really important part. Think of it as like a container,
Okay.
and that container is going to hold the value that the user selects in the option menu. We'll see how it works a bit later, but just remember, we need our string var.
Right, string var. Got it. So we got our stage set, we got our container ready. What's next?
The main attraction, creating the option menu.
Let's do it.
For that, we use the tk.optionMenu command. And here's where it gets interesting. When you create the option menu, you get to pass in all the options that you want your users to be able to pick from.
Okay, so this is where we actually define what goes into the drop-down menu. Right?
Exactly. You can keep it simple and just use a list of strings, like maybe a list of colors, or you can get a little fancier and use a dictionary.
Ooh, dictionaries. We'll have to dive into those a little later. But first, let's nail down these basics.
Absolutely. And then the last thing we need to do for now is to actually position our option menu within the window. And we can do that using the Grid Layout Manager, which is super intuitive even for beginners.
Grid layout, positioning. Got it. And you know what I love about the code snippet that we have is it shows how to pull options directly from a list using that MyList syntax. It's almost like you're telling Tinker, hey, just use everything in this list.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. If you want to see that little unpacking trick in action, by the way, just type print MyList into your Python console and you'll see how it works.
That's a good tip. I always love those little Python tricks that make coding a bit more fun. And speaking of fun, I'm all about making things look good. You know, a little visual flair never hurts. Can we customize the appearance of our option menu, like the font and stuff?
Absolutely. The code actually shows how to do just that. You can style both the option menu itself and the drop-down options.
That's awesome, because let's be honest, a good-looking interface can really make a difference in how people experience your application. But now, I'm curious, we've got this beautiful option menu all set up. How do we actually use the value that the user selects? Like, that's the whole point, right?
Absolutely. We need to be able to actually do something with that value.
Right.
And that's where our friend options.get comes in.
Okay, remind me, options, that's our...
Right, string var, the container we set up earlier. And when we call .get on it, it fetches whatever the user has currently selected in the option menu.
So we're essentially asking the option menu, hey, what's the user picked? Give us the value.
Exactly.
Got it. So now we have that selected value. What can we do with it? How can we make this option menu actually interactive and responsive to the user's choice? I want to hear more.
So you want to know what we can do with that selected value, right? How do we make it actually do something?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question. We've got this value, but now what?
Well, one way to make things more interactive is to use a button.
A button.
Yeah. We can set things up so that when the user clicks a button, it triggers an action based on whatever's currently selected in the option menu.
I see. So it's like connecting the option menu to a button that makes things happen.
Right. The code snippet actually shows how to do this. We use TK button to create a button, and then using the command attribute, we link it to a function.
Okay, so what kind of function are we talking about here?
It's a custom function, one that we define, and we can call it whatever we want. Let's say we call it my
Oh,
show.
I like it. Descriptive. So this function is what actually contains the code for what we want to happen when the button's clicked.
Precisely. Inside my show, we can write the code to grab that selected value using, you guessed it, options.get. And once we have that value, the possibilities are endless.
Okay, now you're getting me excited. So for instance, our MyShow function could take the selected value and use it to update a label in our application, or maybe it could display a relevant image, or even trigger some kind of calculation.
You've got it. It's a really powerful way to create a dynamic and responsive user interface.
This is awesome. But I gotta say, having to click a button every time to make something happen,
Mhm.
it seems a little, I don't know, clicky. Is there a way to make things even smoother, even more seamless?
You and your quest for seamlessness. I like it. And yeah, you're right. There's a way to achieve that real-time instant update without needing a button at all.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How do we do that?
The secret weapon is the trace method.
Trace method. Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. This is going to be super complicated.
Not at all. Just imagine we're attaching a little sensor to our option menu's string var.
A sensor.
Yeah, and this sensor's only job is to constantly monitor that variable for any changes.
So it's like a dedicated little observer, just watching and waiting. And what happens when it detects a change?
As soon as the user makes a new selection in the option menu, our sensor springs to life and triggers whatever function we've linked it to. No button needed.
Whoa, that's incredible. It's like magic, but with code. I even see here in the code snippet an example. It says options.trace. Hey, WCO, my show. So W, that's our magic code for watch for changes.
You got it. The W tells Tkinter that we're interested in any writes to the variable, which basically means anytime a new value is selected.
That is so cool. Okay, we've gone from a basic drop-down menu to a dynamic, responsive element of our GUI, but now I'm wondering about something. Let's say we wanted to use an option menu to display some user-friendly labels to the user, but behind the scenes, our code needs to work with different values. Is there a way to do that?
You're thinking about dictionaries, aren't you?
Maybe. But aren't those, like, those big, heavy books full of words? How do those fit into Tkinter option menus?
That's a great point, and it's true. In our everyday lives, we use dictionaries to look up words and their meanings. But in programming, dictionaries have a slightly different but equally awesome purpose.
All right, I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Uh-huh.
Tell me more about dictionaries in programming and how they can level up our option menu game.
All right, I'm ready to have my mind blown. Tell me more about dictionaries and programming and how they can level up our option menu game.
Okay, so imagine a dictionary not as a book, but as a really, really organized code check.
A code check. Yeah, you give them your coat, they give you a ticket with a number on it. That number, that's your key, and your coat is the value.
Okay, I kind of see where you're going with this. So instead of words and definitions, we've got these keys and values. But how do we actually use that in our option menus?
Let's say you're making a language learning app, right? You could use an option menu to let users pick their native language. So you display the languages in English, like Spanish, French, German, in the option menu itself.
Right, makes sense. That's what the user sees.
Exactly. But behind the scenes, your code might need to work with language codes instead, like ES for Spanish, FR for French. And dictionaries are how we bridge that gap.
So it's like we're giving the user-friendly label in the dropdown, but then we have this secret code underneath that the program actually uses.
You got it. So the user sees Spanish, they select it, but then your code can grab that corresponding ES value from the dictionary to, do whatever it needs to do.
That's brilliant. It's like having our cake and eating it too. We get the clean, user-friendly interface, but we also have this efficient way to manage the data behind the scenes. And I see the code snippet even shows an example of this, using the .values method to make sure only the user-friendly labels show up in the option menu. But how does the code know which internal value to use when the user makes a selection? It's like, how does it connect Spanish to ES after the user's made their choice?
Another great question. That's where the MyShow function comes into play again.
Our trusty MyShow.
Yep.
I should have known.
So when the user makes a selection, the code actually searches through the dictionary looking for a match.
So it's like a detective trying to match the evidence.
Exactly. So the user picks Spanish, the code goes, okay, Spanish, scans through the dictionary, finds the key labeled Spanish, and then grabs the associated value, which is our ES.
That's so clever. I love how elegant and efficient that is. Okay, dictionaries. I'm officially a fan. This has been so helpful. I feel like my Tinter skills have seriously leveled up today. We've gone from basic option menu creation to using dictionaries, the trace method, even comparing them to combo boxes. What an incredible deep dive.
I'm glad you think so. It's been a lot of fun exploring all this with you.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think the best way to master these Tkinter widgets is just to dive in and start building.
Couldn't agree more. Don't be afraid to experiment, try things out, break things. That's how you learn.
You're telling me.
Ah.
All right, everyone, that's it for today's deep dive into the world of Tinter option menus. We hope you enjoyed it, and more importantly, we hope you feel inspired to go out there and build something amazing. Until next time, happy coding.